like Deborah said, I've been working in the marketing field for a little while. I'll talk a little bit about myself here. So I've been working in online marketing for about 10 years, and I'm a certified Google Ads partner, which means I've gone through some training and also some examination that Google does to show that you know their platform very well on Google Ads. So I currently have that. My experience includes pretty much the range of internet marketing, at least the main stuff, search engine optimization, social media marketing, and online advertising. I've done some of all that, mostly online advertising. And first thing we're going to do is I wanted to show like kind of a practical example here and go over what Google search results consist of, and just kind of point out a few things so that we can we have kind of a baseline here to go off of. So hopefully that's showing up there. Oops. And I'm going to do a quick search here. I'm going to do a local search. Do mechanic near me. And I just wanted to start off with showing some, just what the first page here consists of. So first thing is Google's going to show ads typically at the top of the page for a lot of searches, particularly local searches, because there's a lot of advertising going on for local businesses. Those will typically show at the top here. Below that, we've got local business listings as well. These are usually organic. Sometimes those are ads as well, and they'll usually say that they're ads if they are. And then below that, we have all of the organic listings, meaning just what Google found that was not from paid advertisers. And obviously, there can be pages and pages of this. Anyway, real basic stuff, but I just wanted to point that out as kind of a, first starting point here. Switch back over here, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to actually move up in Google search results and get as high as possible and even the top. There are two ways to do this, two main ways. First one is search engine optimization, or SEO. It's usually what it's called, and pay-per-click advertising, or PPC. And there's pros and cons to each one. We'll talk a little bit about what these are. So search engine optimization is taking advantage of Google's algorithms to rank higher naturally or organically. It doesn't require paying them any money at all, but it's up to you to make your website optimized to be able to show higher. And one of the unfortunate things about that is Google can be a little bit secretive about how they do that, about how they decide to rank pages higher. And some people have kind of figured it out, and you can find information about this and tests that they've done. And, there's a lot that's been figured out, but there's also a lot that's still unknown. So people who do search engine optimizations, they do the best they can. And, they monitor page rankings over time to see what changes they've made and how they've helped. Search engine optimization can take some time. Typically what you do is you make changes to your website, and you'll have to wait a bit, and you'll really have to monitor the rankings and see where you end up over time and see how it goes. And although some of it's vague, there are definite things you can do on search engine optimization to improve your rankings. Some of those things, like links that are coming back to your website, that's a pretty big factor that Google looks at. Where are those links coming from? Are those reputable? So an activity that can be done on search engine optimization, for example, amongst other activities, is building up links that go back to your website. So anyway, that's a whole field, and there's lots of different things that can be done about it, but that was just kind of an example on search engine optimization on one of the things that can be done. This also includes optimizing your local business page if you're a local business, like we saw in those search results earlier, that stack of business listings that were there. That's also organic SEO that'll get those to rank higher. So we'll talk a bit about pay-per-click now. That is the other way that you can rank high on Google, and it definitely has some pluses to it. You will get high rankings immediately with pay-per-click advertising, and you'll get results immediately, typically. So it's a very quick way to do it, but obviously the downside to it, or whatever, the trade-off is that you have to pay for it. But what's good is Google lets you spend as much as you want, as much as you're able to. So, or as little as you're able to, I should say, as much or as little. So if you want to spend $200 or $300 a month on advertising, you can do that. If you want to spend $2,000 or $3,000, you can do that. And however much you spend is just going to dictate how much traffic you get. So you really have a lot of control over it, which is good. And the other good thing about pay-per-click advertising is it's pretty easy to track return on investment. You can do tracking to see how many people called off of your ads directly from the ads. You can find out how many people have submitted forms through your website from your ads. And you can track all of this and really get down to a granular detail on how much did you spend and how much was that lead? How much did you spend for that lead? And then you can get down into how much was that lead worth? How much did they spend with your business? So I tend to be a little bit more biased towards pay-per-click advertising personally, just because it can get such a good result very quickly. It does take some work and take some skill, but one of the things that is good is Google has gotten to a point where you actually can get started with very little skill. So if you're brand new, they do have ways of setting up campaigns to where it's very, very easy. It's all automated. The downside to it is you have a little less control over some things, but for a lot of businesses, it's kind of okay to give up that control to Google, because they're pretty smart and they want you to succeed, so you keep advertising with them. We'll go over that in a little bit here on how to actually set up some of those set up a campaign that's more automated, just to show how people who are brand new to the platform can get started. But aside from the sort of automated route, you can go a more advanced route and have a lot of control, very granular control on things like exactly where you want to target, the geographical locations down to zip code or city, the exact keywords, and excluding keywords that you don't want your ad to show up for. There's just a lot more control you can have if you kind of move up to the less automated version of Google Ads. But really both of them are good, and really a good way to get started, to start driving leads from internet as a source. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Google Business Pages and what we can do with this to actually drive more leads from Google to any local business, really, that delivers a service or sales in person. So as we looked at already, so Google Business Pages, it displays business information at the top of search results along with user reviews with them. And I'm sure it's something everyone has seen. A lot of people use it when they're looking for a new business. They either use Yelp or they use Google to actually research where they're going, what business they're going to look at the reviews and get more information about it, and even contact the business directly from those listings. So it's something I'm sure everyone is, relatively familiar with what they are. As a business, it's definitely a must to have a page set up through Google. It's set up through what's called Google My Business. That's Google's sort of platform for business owners to be able to edit their page, and make any changes, make changes they need to, respond to reviews, those kinds of things. So it's very important for businesses to set this up. Typically, Google will automatically set one up for new businesses, and it's going to say whatever they decide it to say when it's set up. The business name might be off, the hours might be off. So it's important that for new businesses to actually go in and claim those listings. And once they claim it and they prove that they're the owner, usually through a phone call, they can then go in and actually build out the page and actually add the information, add photos, and really make it a good solid page that shows all the information that's needed. And some things you can do to optimize your Google page. First thing, kind of obvious, you want to make sure your name, address, phone number are all correct and up to date. And one point on this is you do want to make sure that the way you format these things match how they are on your website, they match how they are on Yelp, and they match how they are on any other directories that you may have your business on. That's pretty important. It's kind of a search engine optimization point to have all of these different contact information about your business match across what Google sees. And you'll have a description box where you can fill out a description for what your business is. You'll want to make sure that your description is natural sounding, it's very complete. You want to add keywords in there for what services you offer. And if you can add at least one or two in there for your location, you definitely want to do that. I wouldn't recommend stuffing keywords into your description and kind of making it seem unnatural. So just make it complete, natural sounding, include a few keywords. The next thing you'll be able to do is add categories. And you'll be able to add a primary category and then some subcategories to it, or secondary categories. For the primary category, you'll want to select the most accurate, specific primary category you can that describes your business. And for the subcategories, you'll want to make sure they're, of course, relevant, but you don't want to necessarily add a bunch of subcategories. Like, in other words, what's going to matter more is the relevance on the categories and subcategories. So although Google gives you a number of subcategories you can add, you don't necessarily feel like you have to fill all of those in. So relevance is most important on that. And then within categories, you can have specific features depending on what kind of category it is and what kind of business you are. For example, a dentist's office may have services as a feature under the category dentistry, where a dentist could add things like teeth whitening or dental implants. So you'll want to make sure you take a look at those categories and see what are the features that you can add to those categories and add those as well. And then, of course, you want to make sure all the information aside from your contact information is filled out, like your hours and your website. There's other smaller details that you can add like that, and you want to, of course, make sure those are there and that those are accurate. And then for photos, use a variety of photos. Don't use stock photos. I would definitely recommend against that. You'll want to use photos that really show your office in the best light possible. You'll want to show members of your team. You'll want to show some exterior shots of your office, some interior shots, maybe services being delivered. Google actually has some recommendations on how to take your photos, like the best photos to include, which is what this link is right here on this slide. And if you don't want to copy down the link or anything, you can also just search on Google, like recommendations for Google business page photos, and it should take you to this page as one of the first results. And then the other, probably the most important part of the page, or very important part of the page, is of course reviews, because that is what potential customers are going to look at and decide whether they're going to come in and see you. And they are also a very strong signal to Google on how they rank you in that listing of businesses on the front page. Like we saw earlier, we only saw like 3 or 4 businesses listed, maybe 5. There's obviously many others. So you know, that's one of the things that it uses to decide on which businesses it's going to show in that top section there, amongst other things, but reviews is a big one. And the best way to get reviews is really to ask your customers. Just, you know, remind them, ask them, you know, can you please leave a review? And I'm actually going to show you a template on the next slide that you can use to basically give them instructions on how to go in and leave reviews, because that's another important part of it too. People don't necessarily know the best way to do it, or they're not necessarily familiar with Google and how to do that. They may be familiar with Yelp, or they may not be familiar with any sort of internet review platform. So it's important to give them pretty clear instructions, and I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. On any negative reviews, it's definitely recommended that you respond to them. And you don't want to be overly defensive, but, you know, try and resolve the issue, basically. Ask them to contact you directly in the response, you know, so that the situation can be resolved. Because when other people come on the page and they see that, and if they see a negative review and they don't see a response from the business owner, it could imply that what they're saying is correct, and maybe the business owner didn't care to resolve their problem. So I definitely recommend responding to negative reviews as much as possible. You know, occasionally there may be maybe the 1 or 2 that are hard to respond to, or you know, however the case may be, but I would always recommend respond to all of them if possible. And then right here we have an example of, sorry to jump around on this, but I couldn't fit this image on the last slide. This is a example review instructions that you can give to your customer or your client. And you can see it gives very clear instructions on where to go, how to do it, how to post, and you know, it'd be a little hard for anyone to mess that up. So these are good to have. You can have them around your business. You can have it if you have some sort of maybe a packet of information that you give customers as they're leaving. You could include this as part of it, and it will help to get people more involved and leaving reviews. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about Google Ads here. So Google Ads are in the platform of advertising. Google search ads are really the best way to reach customers who are looking for what you have to offer. What I mean by that is there are different types of advertising you can do on Google. You can do what's called display advertising, where your ad shows up on a bunch of different websites, and it's usually an image. And you can decide which websites your ad goes on, and you can decide maybe themes of types of websites to show your ad on. And then there's another type of advertising called search ads. So search ads, what's good about them is they really match what the person is searching for to what you have to offer. Display advertising, you don't necessarily have that much control. So a lot of times what happens on display advertising is your ad gets shown a bunch of times, like many, many, many times. And then out of those many, many, many times, you may get a lead off of that. Whereas with search ads, your ads will show a lesser number of times before you actually get leads, because you're matching your business up with exactly what they're searching for. And like for example, like the search I did earlier, like mechanic near me, the search ad is going to, you know, you're going to be matched with what they're searching for. They need a mechanic. You're there locally, you're offering it, and you know, they're much more likely to click on your ad, as opposed to if you created an image ad and showed it on a bunch of blogs about car work or mechanics or something like that. So I highly recommend Google search ads if you're going to do any advertising on Google, at least as a first, attempt at advertising. I would recommend Google search ads. And like I said earlier, you can get started at pretty much any skill level on Google search ads. Google has what's called smart campaigns, which will let you set up campaigns that are pretty much fully automated. You go through a couple steps, which I'll show you in just a minute here. You provide some information, and Google creates the ad for you, and it runs it for you. And it's a good way to get started. It's very hands-off. The other option is to either manage the ads more precisely yourself, or to hire someone to manage them more precisely. And that would be not using Google Smart Campaigns. That would be using the full Google Ads experience to manage your ads. And like I said earlier, what's good about Google Ads is you control how much you spend. You can spend as little or as much as you like. It's not like traditional advertising where you have to say, purchase an ad in a local publication and pay a bunch of money up front, and then you may or may not get leads from it. That's one of the advantages of online advertising like Google Ads, is it's just whatever you want to spend is what you can spend. And then I'm going to run through the steps real quick here, just to show you an example of setting up Google Ads using what I mentioned earlier on Smart Campaigns, which is the automated approach to Google Ads. So the first thing you'll typically do is you'll go to ads.google.com. You'll need to either sign up for a Google account, or if you already have one, you can use an existing Google account. It will then ask you, what your goal is. Do you want more calls? Do you want more people visiting your website? Do you want more people visiting your physical business? And then you'll just decide there, and it'll sort of tailor things for you based on that. It'll tailor the next questions it asks for you. So from there, it will ask, describe your business, your name, your address, your web address. And then you'll select targeting. And Google Smart Campaigns, which is what this is, lets you choose a radius around an area. You actually also can choose specific areas too on that other option there, but radius is usually a good way to get started, because you can just say, 10, 15 miles around my business is where I want this ad to show. And it'll show to people who are in that location. So very important for that setting to be in place for local businesses, obviously. And then from there, you'll add, these are keyword themes. So Google will, although you're putting these keywords in there, like for example, business training and business management courses, it will also show for similar keywords to these that are in these same themes. So you want to choose these. Obviously, the more relevant, the better. The more specific you can get, the better, so that your ads are showing to as specific of an audience as you can. So you'll add a number of these. I would recommend maybe adding, no less than maybe 4 or 5. You don't have to get too crazy with it, because the system is pretty smart about how it decides the similar keywords that it can be shown for. And then it'll actually generate an ad for you automatically. It'll go into your website and pull information from it, and they're actually not bad, the one that it does generate. But if you want to change anything on it, you have the opportunity to. These are all editable text fields, and you want to include keywords, obviously keywords in the headlines. Location is really important to have in the headlines. Whatever service you're offering, definitely in the headline. If you're a mechanic, you got to have that in the headline. And you'll want to have some other things like, you'll want to have some benefits as well, and some strong points of your business. Like for example, here in this, knowledgeable instructors, that's a good selling point that someone might see when they look at this ad, that might, entice them to click on it. And you want a call to action, usually in the description. Usually towards the end of the description, you want some sort of call to action, which would be asking the person to take some sort of action. So either contact us, either call us, enroll now, whatever it is. But you always want to have a call to action in your ad. It really entices the person to do something. And after you set up your ad, you can add a phone number, and this phone number will show with your ad, so that when someone is on mobile, they can just tap the call button, which will show, and it'll go to this phone number. Also very good to have for local businesses. And then you set your budget. It's whatever you'd like it to be. They have a recommended one. It's probably good to go with if you're able to spend that much. If you can't, then you can always do enter your own budget at the bottom and use what you'd like. We're just going to touch a little bit on social media marketing. So there's two approaches here to social media marketing. And it's very similar to Google, which is you have an organic approach and you have a paid approach. And it's important to do both. With organic on social media, particularly Facebook, your reach is going to be limited. So if you make a post on your business page, it could be anything, maybe promoting an upcoming event, or maybe just a text update, or maybe a photo update. It doesn't mean it's going to show to all your followers. It's going to show to a very, very small fraction of them. And organically, what's going to determine if it shows to more people than that is going to be how much interaction it gets. So if you have people who have seen the post sharing it, liking it, Facebook will decide to show it to more people if it starts getting more activity. So it can be a bit of a catch-22, because you make a post and let's say you have 500 people who like your Facebook page, and you look at how many people it's reached and it's like 30. It makes it a little hard to get people actually interacting with it. To get around that catch-22, you can do paid advertising with Facebook. And fortunately, it's pretty cheap to get your post shown to quite a bit more people. I mean, you could spend as little as, $5 to $10, and, instead of getting your post shown to 30 people, maybe it gets shown to 200 or 300. That's just kind of I'm not saying that would be the case in every circumstance, but it's an example. Like it can be kind of significant how much more you can get with putting a little bit of money towards it. And like I said, the best strategy is to use both. I think if you're going to do social media marketing, Facebook is definitely the best way to get started with it. There are a lot of options on targeting, a lot of different things you can do on it, and it's fairly user friendly. There are advanced things, but it's fairly user friendly. And I'll show you an example as well of a very user-friendly approach in just a few minutes here that you can get started with without having to go into a whole advertising training on how to do Facebook ads. All right, so a little bit more on Facebook, and I'm sticking on Facebook mostly here because, like I said, I think it's definitely the best one to get started with. It's the one I've done the most with. And like I said, there's lots of options, lots you can do with it. And like Google, you could spend as little or as much as you'd like. They have a huge audience available on Facebook. I mean, there's over 1 billion people that use it, well over 1 billion people that actually have accounts on Facebook. So it's a huge audience. And it provides a lot of granular control on who you want to reach. So for example, if you want to reach, let's say everyone in your area, like in a 10-mile radius around your business, who has an interest in comic books, Facebook is very good about determining who those people are and getting your ad in front of them. And you can also use custom audiences such as email lists, customer lists, and what you can do is actually upload those lists to Facebook, and it will match that contact information with a Facebook account. So let's say you have an email list with a bunch of email addresses. You upload that list. Facebook takes it. It matches all the different email addresses with those people's Facebook accounts, and you now have a good audience that you can market to. A lot of times, previous customers are a good source to market to. And then on top of that, you can take that list which you've uploaded, and you can have Facebook create a similar audience based on that, and they grow through it and determine the different characteristics of it and create a new audience for you. And that can be really effective too. I've found similar audiences based on lists you've uploaded of previous customers to be a pretty successful list that you can, or a pretty successful audience that you can target to. And you can also target people who've visited your website. Another thing I highly recommend, this is called remarketing. So you're marketing again to people who you've had contact with previously or have marketed to previously. You can generate a list in Facebook. You put a code on your website, which will then allow you to generate a list in Facebook of everyone who's visited your website over the last, let's say 30 days, 60 days, however long you want to have it. And you can then reach those people with Facebook advertising. I've found that to be really good. And like I mentioned earlier, organic posts reach very few people typically, unless you have a very large presence online and a very large base of followers. So definitely recommended that you boost those with advertising. And this is the way I mentioned earlier of easily getting started with that. What you can do is when you make a post on Facebook, you might have seen this before. If you run a business page, there's usually an option to boost it. And this is a very simple way of just showing your ad to more people. It can be more people who like your page, more people who are friends of people who like your page. And you can choose some other targeting as well. It's more basic targeting than available in like the full Facebook advertising experience, but it's still pretty good. You can still choose location, for example, where you want your ad to show. And it's pretty simple. You just, however much you want to spend, you can say, I want to spend $10, show my ad to this amount, this many more people, and it'll give you an estimate of how many people it'll reach. Like in this example, it'll reach 900 to 2,400 people. Obviously a big range, but even 900 is going to be a lot better than what they would have given you organically if you didn't spend any money with them. And then you could choose how long you want your ad to run, or a date you want to run it until. So again, this is something I recommend for sure. If you've never done Facebook advertising, it's a good way to get started and actually get some more activity on Facebook and get more people seeing you and hopefully reaching out to you from those ads. So that's mostly all I have. Happy to take any questions. Looks like let's see, I do see one in the chat here. If there are any others, feel free to drop them in there. And it looks like this one is, when is it recommended time to start Google Ads? When you start your business or after a couple of months, when you are more stable? Honestly, you could start right away. If you have a website there that's good and complete and has the information you want to show, and it's got the contact information on it very clearly, and um, it's built out very well. You can do it right away. I wouldn't recommend waiting, because I think if you wait, yeah, there's just no reason to wait, really. It's like, I would say, if you're a new business, you really want to, like, the whole idea is you want to get business going, so you know, market as much as you can.